Hey, folks, it is December the 8th, and this is our U.S. History course. And today we're talking about World War II. We left off last time where we were talking about the Nazis attacking Russia, and they had tremendous gains initially, but then they wound up getting bogged down in the Russian cities, and then the Russian winter hit. It totally was devastating to the German army, and they lost essentially their best troops, and that was going to help turn the tide for the Allies against them. So, speaking of allies, we have the United States. Remember, I told you when we entered the war, Churchill convinced us to go attack North Africa first, because it was out of North Africa that the British were getting a lot of their supplies, such as oil and resources like that. So we liberated North Africa. And then from that point, we go just across the Mediterranean and we attack Sicily, because Sicily was the Italian government, the bad guy, Mussolini, was controlling it. And we were going to jump from Africa, Sicily, Italy, and then move on up from there. So these are U.S. paratroopers in Sicily, the Italian island. In July of 1943, the Allies invaded Sicily in what was known as Operation Husky and took control of the island within a month. The war was unpopular in Italy, and strong anti-fascist movement was gaining control of Italy. So Mussolini might have had control of the government. He might have been a dictator, but that doesn't mean all Italians were on board with it, especially once American forces started making ground in Italy. A lot of Italian cities had uprisings of people who were arming themselves and fighting their own government. When I was 20 years or so ago, when I was a soldier, we were stationed in Italy, and I remember a friend of mine was dating an Italian girl, and she would show us pictures of her grandfather and his friends, and they were just like dressed in normal clothing. They had machine guns, and they were out in the streets fighting fascists. Right, so it was like it was like a real war, even within like these countries. Not everybody was on board with it. So, with the loss of Sicily, Mussolini lost support. He was then arrested and murdered. He was so unpopular, his own troops turned against him. He tried to flee with his mistress, but both of them would be captured, shot to death, and then their bodies were hung up from a lamppost. And crowds of people would come up and throw rocks and stuff like that at their bodies. They were very hated when they passed away. Italians would then surrender unconditionally to the Allies. But even though they surrendered, the German army refused to leave, and they decided to entrench themselves and defend Italy from the Allies taking over. They're like, even though you might have quit, we cannot leave this ground, because if we do, Germany could be next. The Allies were halted by Nazis just north of the city Salerno, and they would not be able to break through this mountainous region until May of 1944. So Salerno, that area, up and down the spine of Italy, all the way up and down that boot, you have just a huge mountain range. And throughout World War I and then later World War II, Italians would tunnel a whole lot of tunnels and things like that were used for storage and defense, that were extremely bomb-proof. The Germans would make military bases on top of these hard-to-scale mountains, and they would rain down bullets and artillery shells and mortars and all kinds of things on Allies. There's going to be a lot of fierce mountain fighting. In fact, this is where you'll see some of America's first special forces. That was a lot of their job, was to be able to climb up mountains and sneak in enemy bases and try to break their way in. But that was extremely dangerous fighting. By June, U.S. forces had taken Rome and secured Italy. And that's going to be tough because we made one attempt to take Rome once before, and we almost got trapped and we almost lost our army in Italy doing so. But luckily, we got intelligence, pulled out in time, and had to make a hard fight to get back there. So, yeah, Italy was pretty tough. Hitler kind of knew he'd have to defend Italy because the Italian army had proved not quite as capable as the German army and didn't quite trust Mussolini. Uh, Mussolini was kind of known for being pompous and arrogant, but not that bright. You ready? All right, so as the Allies are moving from the south, you have to remember what the Americans wanted to do in the first place was to liberate France through an invasion across the English Channel from Great Britain. Churchill told us to wait, and we did wait. So we attacked through Italy first, but now the time's come for D-Day, which would be, of course, the invasion day for the rest of Europe. Here we have U.S. soldiers inside these essentially they're like motorized boats with wheels on the bottom, right? These weren't the ones with wheels on the bottom. They're just small motorized boats. They have these steel walls around them, but they're not bulletproof. Up on these mountains, which they're attacking right from the beachhead, there's a whole lot of very well protected German high powered machine guns that can cut right through these. In fact, the rounds were powerful enough to shoot through all like lines of troops at once, just a single bullet. They're getting bombarded and all this. The beaches have mines, razor wire, anti-tank traps, and all kinds of stuff like that. A lot of this is very difficult to climb, very well protected. And the Germans have cleared out things that would get in the way of their firing. The Allies, of course, didn't just throw the troops out there. They had their battleships bombard this as much as possible to at least detonate the mines and remove some of the traps and to try to at least get some of the Germans, but it wasn't that effective. So America enters the war in France. With Italy secured, the Allied leadership agreed that it was time to invade France across the English Channel and into Normandy. So Normandy is, of course, northeastern part of France, pretty close to Germany as well. Once you cross Normandy, you can make it into Germany. And if you go to the west of it, you can, of course, liberate France. In Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious assault, supplemented with large-scale airborne assault. So that means we had troops coming off the boats onto the beach in the amphibious assault, and we had a lot of paratroopers and also soldiers in what were known as gliders. Gliders were essentially they were made of mostly plywood in the shape of an airplane, and they had controls to make them go right and left and up and down, but they had no engine. They essentially had them with just a cord being towed by a real airplane, and then they would detach themselves from the airplane and crash land. They were extremely deadly because when they crash land, sometimes they like really, really crashed. And of course, they could also get shot. The airborne assault, the gliders went behind the enemy lines. This was on June the 6th, 1944, what's known as D-Day. Comprised of around 200,000 men, 6,483 ships, and 1,500 tanks, the beach assaulters faced thousands of German troops along a natural wall of rock. Out of the 5 beaches attacked, Americans targeted Utah and Omaha. Of course, we also had our allies attacking the other beaches, such as the English, Canadians, Australians, people like that. After a week of fighting and counterattacks, all 5 beaches were linked up. By August of 1944, Paris was liberated. The Allies pressed on, and within 2 months, they were west of Germany. And of course, it wasn't just France, it was also like Belgium, the Netherlands, places like that were being liberated. As soldiers went through these cities and got rid of the Nazi occupiers, the people were extremely happy. They would offer the soldiers whatever they still had in their pantries. They would cheer them on, like parades and things like that. So they're very, very happy to be liberated from the Nazis. So the Allies pressed on. Within 2 months, they were in the western part of Germany. And so we are pushing in from the west, racing towards Berlin. But we're going to see that the Soviets, after defeating the Nazis in Russia, will start moving in from the east, also racing towards Berlin to finally put an end to the war in Europe. But yeah, D-Day might be important for you. So June 6, 1944, D-Day.
Yes, he does. Do you have 8 machines Johan can borrow?
Yeah,
Figured you would, right?
no problem. Actually, I was kind of thinking if we did have to send any out, it would be best to come from us first.
Okay. You're probably right.
Sounds like Elliot, and I guess Math is going to need it.
Yeah, let's we'll cross that bridge
Right?
when it presents itself.
Do you need a hand?
I think I'm just gonna snag 8 and
Okay.
go through. Another question, am I interrupting?
Oh, no, you're fine. They're finishing up their notes up here.
It's just Abby. She doesn't come up, right, Abby? Not at all. She's not the least bit offended.
You need help.
Mariah tomorrow,
Yeah.
5th period,
Mhm.
I get that.
has an 11th grade study hall. I'm not even sure that's still a thing.
5th period study hall, like,
You know what I'm talking about?
well, like
I'm not sure.
in the office?
What's that?
Is she in the office or something? Is that?
Martinez? Oh, she's.
Yeah,
sorry. Martinez
Teacher, not student.
has a 5th period class
Yeah.
that is 11th grade study hall.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any.
On
You?
A days?
Or any
Yeah, that A day.
That's them. I'm in there.
It's these people. Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. So the short question is, can they come in here 5th period? Can you deal with this? Thank you. Okay.
Are y'all gonna be okay? Okay.
Let's check that one off my list.
Do you have anyone else in here?
No, it's my planning period. Y'all can just sit here, do study hall while I do my.
Yeah, you're okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Grant, I have a question.
Yes, I'm working on plan. I didn't forget about you.
I was just
Completely.
wondering, we were in contact with a lot of the people in theater, like all 4 of us actually.
Of course you were.
And there's and with Miss Johnson and everything like that, and she's not feeling good, and
Who's not feeling good?
Miss Johnson is.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just wondering, is there,
I'm listening. Sorry.
I don't know how to ask this.
Just come out and say it.
Everything that I've been talking about since Christmas.
Where is your trash?
Oh, it's up front right
He's
there.
asking if we should quarantine.
Why aren't we getting quarantined whenever everybody else
Okay.
is?
Are you leaving? Are you going anywhere? Can I deliver these and come back?
Sure, you can come on back. He has to give this to them immediately, but he can come back and answer your question. It's fine, it's fine.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, hey, folks, let's go on to the next one. So, now, okay. So, there are going to be a couple of problems that we're going to have to come across when we talk about the history. Because, yes, it's true. Almost all of the war atrocities, the inhumane things that were done in World War II were by the Nazis, the Japanese, and some of the Italians, like such as against African people and also Gypsy people. But the Allies had some bombings that were very sketchy, right? And so one is the firebombing of Dresden. This was one of the largest population cities in Germany. And the Allies, in order to get against its industrial sector that was making more supplies, we used a new method of bombing called firebombing, which totally rendered this civilian city into nothing but ashes, as you see there. So totally devastating. Thousands of civilians died in that fire. So that's one of the more not so cool things. So the war intensified as in Germany as Allies bombed wartime industries and transportation systems in German cities. In February 1945, British and American bombers made 3 runs over the German city of Dresden. The bombs dropped caused a massive firestorm, which killed 135,000 civilians overnight, which was the first 9/11. So when you think about that, it's like everybody. That's the whole families, right? As the Soviets pushed the Germans out of Russia and then Eastern Europe, Stalin, remember he's Russian, immediately sought to create a new power base. So they got rid of the Nazis in Russia. Their army is pushing forward as they liberate places controlled by the Nazis. Instead of giving them back their land, we're going to see that the Russians are going to take control of it. So as the Red Army, as they were known, liberated Poland, communist officials immediately installed a Soviet-friendly government called the Lublin government. Similar attempts were made in Romania, Czechoslovakia, and Bulgaria. Those are countries in Eastern Europe. So as they free these people from the Nazis, they install Russian-controlled governments, right? So not too good. It's going to be one of those things that's really going to scare America and our allies later on as we see that. So.
What's he taking most computers?
8th grade. Yeah, 8th grade.
So like on the Apple in high school.
Well, yeah, because I think it's because some of them are having to. I guess their teacher assigned something for them where they need computers, so that's okay. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they're here, right? They're here to help kids and stuff. So that and the only time I really need them is 3rd period. Economics needs them for the project, and I need them to be available for the college prep class so that y'all can plan out the things you're going to do. Right. So actually a study hall, but I was like, let's have a focus.
So you turn their study hall into a class?
Kinda. It kind of is a class period, but it's not. It's not instructor led. It's supposed to be student led. It's like you, the student, are supposed to go out there
Are you
and
getting your credit for it?
maybe that's a question for the school counselor, really, because technically it falls under her, but I'm the one managing it. Does that make sense? Yeah, because okay. All right, next one. All right, so the 3 major leaders of the Allied forces: Winston Churchill for England, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And as you can see here, his health is in serious decline. He's about to pass away after this conference. I think he decided to have a wheelchair instead of a wheelchair this time. So he didn't like having photos in his wheelchair. He really didn't. He didn't. He it was kind of like a secret that everybody knew about, you know. So, and of course, Joseph Stalin, leader of Russia. So they're coming together for a common cause to defeat the Nazi powers.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you go back? The guy in at the far, this left, that one.
Uh-huh.
Let's see how small his head is compared to the jacket.
I can't see anything.
Just he looks like he's about to like shrink there.
He wasn't known for his looks or his fashion attire,
The guy
right?
on the left? Yeah, I see.
Yeah, because Churchill, yeah. Oh, he's a little old man by now. You know, he's not big, just short little man. So yeah, it looks like he's wearing his dad's coat. So okay. All right, so alliances. In February 1945, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt met at a resort on the Black Sea in what would be known as the Yalta Conference. So here they're going to hammer out some plans. Roosevelt got Stalin to agree to aiding the U.S. Fight Japan and help create the United Nations. They're like, hey, look, communist Russians, we know that we haven't necessarily been friendly in the past, but after we defeat Hitler, will you please help us fight Japan? Because, well, you know, Russia's not that far. Its eastern border isn't that far from Japan. And can we like maybe meet together and make this world? Stalin got to keep the countries that the Soviets took over the Germans. That was part of the deal. So those Eastern European countries that they liberated are like, okay, you get to keep them. They didn't ask those people. They just did it. Roosevelt shortly after would die of a heart attack, leaving his vice president, Truman, as the new president. This conference helped create the post-war world following the Allied victories. By late 1944, Hitler was growing desperate and called for a last effort to stop the Allies from taking over all of Germany. So, so all of that land that the Nazi army had conquered before and during the war, the World War, is lost. Now the Allies are in Germany itself. So Hitler, he's getting really bitter. He's going to send in the last of his troops in one more effort to turn back the Allies. He's going to get. He's going to start demanding that even like young teenagers and to start joining the army. They're just so low in troops. He's getting really bitter where he sees the German people as failing him, like unworthy of his greatness. You know, the guy was a megalomaniac. He thought he was God's gift. All right, let's go on this. We might just finish this line. No, I want to finish the war with the Allies. All right, so this photo is of U.S. troops marching through German forest in this winter. I think winter 44 or 45. At the where they're marching during the Battle of the Bulge, and this could be a really grueling fight. U.S. forces are going to take a massive hit. but it's going to break the back of the German army. In December of 1944, yes, 44, the Battle of the Bulge, the German army began an attack that went 50 miles into Belgium with the intention of splitting American forces in half. So that's in Belgium, not Germany, by that. After 10 days of fighting, the Americans managed to halt the German offensive, though both sides faced terrible losses. This was like a last-ditch effort. It was their Hail Mary pass. It was like, we're going to do this or we're lost. Well, luckily they won. And the Germans were facing shortages in equipment and fighting-age men. In March of 1945, U.S. forces crossed the Rhine River and pushed on to Berlin. On April the 25th, American and Soviet forces met just outside the city. So this is what I was talking about. Americans racing from the west, Soviets racing towards the east, and they're going to the Soviets are going to get there just. So that's what the goal was. Remember, American planners decided we were going to fly, and that's going to end the war in Europe, and it's going to end our lecture today too. But the Battle of the Bulge is also going to be kind of important for U.S. forces. We're going to lose so many men. It's going to convince the president to desegregate the army. We're like, gosh, okay. So kind of ran out of standard white male troops, even though there already had been like Hispanics and Asians integrated into the forces. For the Battle of the Bulge, most African Americans were in African American only units, right? So this is going to help flip that switch. All right, last one. All right, so here we have Soviet soldiers racing through the heavily bombarded, battled city of Berlin, the capital of Germany. The siege is going to be very, very intense, door-to-door fighting. Hitler, in his last calls to the German people, is going to tell them to lay down their lives in just suicidal defense of the city, to take out as many people as possible with them. Not everybody's going to listen to that, but a lot of people are going to fight for their lives because the Germans are extremely terrified of the Russians. They're afraid that they're going to be treated very brutally if they surrender to the Soviets. So many of them are actually trying to hold out and survive so that they can actually surrender to Americans so they can get treated better. So on April the 30th, Hitler, hiding in a bunker after telling the German nation to fight to the death, committed suicide and had his followers burn his corpse. On May the 8th, 1945, VE Day, that's Victory in Europe, the rumors of the genocidal murder of Jewish, mentally ill, Catholic, Gypsy, and politically dissident people reached the shores of America. Many didn't believe it until the death camps were liberated. In 1941, the Holocaust was initiated by the Nazi leadership, primarily to exterminate Jewish people from German-held territory. Around 6 million people were systematically starved, experimented on, enslaved, raped, and murdered. And so, yeah, there had been stories of people who survived this that made it to America, and they didn't even tell newspapers like the New York Times what was going on. They wouldn't print the stories because they didn't believe it. In fact, remember I told you Dwight D. Eisenhower was the lead general for American forces to liberate Europe. And he, whenever they came across these camps, he would make his soldiers march by and look at these people and look at these camps because he figured no one would believe it. And he needed as many witnesses as possible. So as the British, as the Russians came across these camps, they of course gave them medical attention, fed them, freed them, imprisoned their captures. You know, it was like horrifying. So, that's going to end it for the war in Europe.
There's another, like,
Yeah, that's been around since the 40s. Yes, like people have thought that. In fact, the Russians, right? They found his bunker. They dug it up after the siege, and they brought the remains that they thought was his. Like it was basically like a few bits of bones and like a jawbone and stuff because they're like burnt up, right? And they brought it back to Russia and they put it in a museum in Moscow. Some years ago, they did genetic testing on it. They found out it wasn't him. It was actually some lady, and so they're like, so it's not really his bones.
was
So-
it, no, wait, I thought he also killed himself and. his
And
kid.
Ava Braun, yeah. So
Was that her?
it could be hers, maybe. I don't know. The thing is, though, here's the thing, right? So they were able to get DNA from his family, right? They were willing to give DNA, so they saw it wasn't him or wasn't related to him. Her family, however, when they contacted her family, they're like, no, we want to erase this part of our past. So they were unwilling to like give blood or whatever to test it to see if they're related. So it could be her, could be somebody else. But in any case, we don't know nobody has any of his remains. So like, yeah, some conspiracy theorists think he went to like Argentina or something like that because there's a lot of Nazis actually did flee to South America and set up little German communities that are still there today. And they still speak German and they live in little gingerbread house, looking buildings, stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think Hitler snuck out. I think he died, but a lot of Nazi war criminals did live. Some of them made it to trial. We'll talk about later. But that's going to end our lecture today, and we'll see you Thursday. We'll talk about the war in Japan. Computer's really slow. Won't even let me end it.